Hey folks, welcome back to livecoding.ca. This is Thursday, so I'm starting a new thing called JavaScript Hours. I'll spend about an hour, maybe go a little longer on Thursdays from 10 a.m. Eastern, which is 2 p.m. UTC, for like, yeah, 1 hour, hour 15 minutes maybe. Nothing super long. The goal of this stream in particular is just chat about JavaScript. If folks have questions, I guarantee I'll have all the answers, but it'll be fun to just kind of dig into some things. And since this is the first one, I'm not expecting too many folks. I'm probably going to just do some JavaScript katas off of a great site that I use. I should use it more often, but it's jskatas.org. I like the way this site works because, well, I'll show it in a minute, but it's kind of neat because you have to have the unit test passed to get to do the kata basically. So it's kind of neat. It's the way they have it set up though. It's like there's a piece of each kata that you need to fix, and then that will make the test passed. So I find it pretty cool. Just gonna do a couple checks here. All right, so yeah, I'm always paranoid about audio. The actual stream doing it never bothers me. So we've got closed captioning and everything going on, so shake and bake, we are all good. All right, so why don't we switch on over to the code view for now. And also, I'm just gonna drop the help command here. There's some fun things you can do in here. It says in there you can create all kinds of pieces on there, and you can move them around on the screen. I added a couple new ones like the poop emoji, and so you can do, for example, exclamation poop dash up, and it moves it around. You can keep going like that, and I'll bring out the other new one I added, which is donut, and let's move Mr. Donut to the left. Anyways, and we're gonna bring my favorite one on, which is Todd. Todd is a lobster. If you don't get that reference, Todd Libby, who's an accessibility specialist, someone I met through Twitter. He's pretty funny, but he's always eating lobster, so that's what that's all about. So let's just move that over, and then we'll set Todd up here, move him up a bit. All right, cool. Anyways, have fun with those things. If you're never sure what the commands are, you can do exclamation help in the chat. And yeah, so that's where we're at. Cool. All right, so let's just, since I wasn't expecting really anybody or maybe very few people showing up today, so I think for now I'm just gonna start off with doing some katas, and if folks pop by, great, and then we get some questions going, we can do that. So like I was saying, here's the site, jskatas.org, and the katas vary. So there's some older katas, like from earlier versions of JavaScript, which is typically called ECMAScript. There's the newer stuff like ECMAScript 6, which is pretty much anything from 2015 and on. I'll probably jump into those. There's some here that honestly I don't use that often, like the reflection API, stuff like that, but I think we'll go through, I don't know, we'll start off with, I guess, maybe going here. Okay, so like I was saying, I'm gonna zoom this in a bit. That should be pretty good, I think. Okay, cool. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, the way these katas work, it uses this project called tddbin. I believe it's open source, that's what that is there. Yeah. So you can see here, it will have a unit test that's running. That's what all these describes and its are here. And all these tests are failing right now. So we need to fix the code in the test to get things working. So yeah, let's get to that. Cool. Okay, so like some of these are going to start off easy and they'll progressively get harder, but let's take a peek here. So if we look at this one, it's number dot is integer determines if a value is an integer. I honestly didn't know this method existed on the number class, so that's kind of cool. So, all right, so it's saying assertion method equals function, and that's an error. So we probably want to just change it to function. And now if I do Command S or Control S if you're on Windows or Linux machine, you see that the test passed on the right. Now, hey, Alpaca Nick. Yeah, hey, what's up, TK? So there's my other command I forgot. Exclamation alpaca dash hide. There goes our alpaca. They'll be back shortly. Yeah, so I really like this site because you need to get the unit test passed to really understand what's going on. So, and as I mentioned, because TK just hopped on here, these can get progressively tougher, but it's kind of a nice thing. I should be doing these more often, honestly. I was in a good habit with them a while ago, but kind of stopped at some point for some reason. So let's take a peek here now at the next one. So 0.000. So saying const very 0 is saying number is integer very 0. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. Number is integer. I'm curious about this one. I'm gonna hack the matrix here, and I'm just gonna go in the dev tools for a second, and let's go like this, for example. So it's saying it's not an integer. That's because it's got the 0 dot. It's a floating point. So let's close that. So I would guess that it's not an integer. Passing? I can't tell. The string 0 is not an integer. Okay, wait. Const var 0. That one seems okay. 0 in different ways. Yeah, that first one is... What's going on here? Hold on a sec. Let me save it again. Okay, yeah. Is integer. Oh, I skipped one. That's why. So 0 is an integer. So if we do... See, here the error is... It's putting a null because it wants us to... excuse me. Wants us to fill in to see how to fix the test. Now, if we come to the next one, it's saying we want to assert that a floating point is an integer, and it is definitely not. So I would assume just doing not was good. Okay, and there's one thing, because I haven't done these in a while. The other thing I forgot is you have to do them one by one, because so like, for example, if I put this one back to null and save, and I have got to pause this for 1 sec. I got my garage calling me. 1 sec. Sorry about that, folks. It actually wasn't my garage, but another important call, but I can call them back later. Okay, so like I was saying, if I save this now, okay, it is passing the other one. Okay, yeah, so the order doesn't matter. So basically, we just want to keep fixing all these unit tests. And like I said, it seems trivial at the beginning. You're like, oh, this is super easy. But the point of the katas is to get in the habit of doing these things, and they will get more difficult. So string 0 is not an integer, so we'll do this here, and then we'll save that. And exactly, it's saying it. Ah, hey, how's it going, Bogdan? Thanks for my virtual coffee peeps coming to check out the stream. Since you just popped in, Bogdan, we're doing some ES, sorry, not ES, we're doing some JavaScript katas right now. There's a really good site called jskatas.org, which you can see right here. And it's essentially you're writing unit tests to get things to pass, and that's how you learn how these JavaScript methods or APIs work. And it's a lot of fun. If anybody has questions, as I mentioned, the JavaScript hour stream is for about an hour, maybe an hour, 15 minutes. If you do have questions or you're stuck on something, definitely let me know. But in the interim, if there is no questions, I'm just going to do katas and just chat with you lovely folks in the stream. Okay, so now we're going to look at the next one. So one in different ways. So let's see what this is saying. Okay, assert number is integer. So if we were to do this and save that, that should pass now. So we've got two floating point numbers that we're adding. Again, these look trivial right now, but the goal is to say this is going to give us an integer when they're added together, and we're still asserting that this is an integer. These are some of the easier katas right now, but you know, baby steps. Let's see here. 0.5, 0.2, 0.2 equals 1, isn't it? Yes. Okay, number is integer. 1 or not is false. Okay, let's see here. That's giving me 1. Okay, now I'm not sure what's going on this one. Sometimes this is a good site, but sometimes I'm not sure what they're asking sometimes, and it takes me a while. Okay, so here, 1 or not. So this one I'm kind of confused because that should add up to 1, and it's saying number is an integer, and we're saying it actually shouldn't be. So I'm kind of curious about this one. I'm guessing it's because it's going to say it's 1.0 instead of... Oh, interesting. Okay, this is one of those weird JavaScript things. These are the things, like, I typically don't worry about these things. This is probably like some obscure stuff that they ask you in like interviews and stuff, but like clearly looking at this, you know, 0.5 plus 0.2 plus 0.2 plus 0.1 should be 1. In JavaScript it's not, so it's 0.99999 whatever, which is why 1 or not is not an integer. Okay, here what we're doing, parse inted a 1 is an integer. So in this case here, we're parsing a string, so we want to do 1 instead of 1.01. It doesn't like that one. Why not? Number, oh, sorry. Parse int. And that should pass now. Something to know about parse int is there is a second parameter, and it's the radix. And typically, if you're using this, you should always put 10, so it uses base 10, i.e. a decimal number. If you do other stuff like base 8, for example, and save this, it's still passing right now, but if you did like, I don't know, 1D, for example, okay, that's passing. Okay, there's a scenario where clearly I'm trying to demo it and it's not doing it, but if you're using parse int, I would say most times you're parsing it from base 10, so put a radix of 10 here. Other things to do though is you could just do number like this, and that should pass. It's just another way to do it, but they were using parse int, so let's do that. And I got that error before that said just parse, because there's no method called parse, it's parse int. I should have read the test clearly. The test description is kind of telling you pretty much what it should be. So let's see here. Number 1, number is an integer, number 1. Okay, so this is, okay, I got ahead of myself, but if we do this, for example, number, I'm curious why it's saying it this way. I wonder what that does. Maybe it just defaults to 0 when you don't pass anything in. Okay, yeah. All right, cool. That's what it's doing. So I'm gonna zoom that in there whenever I open up here. These are like, you know, the thing about these things too, though, is I would never write this, you know? Some of this is like quirks or just like behaviors you might not be aware of. So still interesting, but again, like I would never just write number like this. I guess what could happen in a scenario like that is if you did something like number and then null, maybe, you know, like you're reading in something from user data, Or if we did undefined, I imagine it'll do the same thing. Oh, no, it doesn't. If it's null, it does, but not undefined. Okay. Okay. Cool, let's close that. So we're just going through here, and it gets kind of addictive as you do these because you see all the green check marks as you go along. Yeah. Okay. Here it's saying object is not an integer. So, again, this one's not, these aren't too complex yet. So we're saying number is an integer of the object. It clearly isn't, so it should return false and pass. They're doing the explicits here like this. What I would do, honestly, is if I was doing an assert, I would probably do something like this. And then that should still pass. But we'll go back to whatever. I understand why they're being explicit about these things. Hey, Rafi, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining. So, as I mentioned to the others, so this is my JavaScript hours stream. I registered the domain javascripthours.com, so it just goes to my stream right now. Maybe at some point I'll make a actual website. So the point of it is to, if folks have questions about JavaScript or just want to chat about things JavaScript related, could even be TypeScript, we can do that on the stream. But if folks don't really have anything to ask, I'm just doing JS katas and chatting with folks. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And in terms of JavaScript, obviously there's just JavaScript, but there's also stuff with the DOM, so like registering events and all that stuff. So we can talk about all that stuff in the in the context of web dev too. It's not just straight up JavaScript. So what we're doing right now, Rafi, is we're doing some JS katas, like I said. If you go to jskatas.org, I'll drop that in. And there's also, where is it? Front end. Nick T online. I am developer.com. Just gonna get, where is it? Okay, that didn't find it. I don't have search on my blog yet, but let's see here. Just gonna find a post. Here we go. This JS katas is in here, but I'm gonna drop this as well. These are a bunch of front end resources. It's not just JavaScript. There's CSS. There's some paid courses, some other stuff that isn't paid. There's nothing in there are referral links. It's just there's things I use like Egghead or Front End Masters that are just really useful. Hey, how's it going, Oscar? Thanks for popping by. So yeah, so we're just gonna continue on with the katas for now. We got some lo-fi music playing because I'm trying to be cool like all the cool kids. All right, so we're just gonna finish this up here. So 0.1 is not an integer. So if we do this, it's not, this one's failing, but if we do this, it's because it's giving 0.1. So now what we need to do is we need to confirm that that's not an integer. So what I would probably do is I would say number is is integer. And if we save that, that should pass. And then we got one more there. So, okay, number is float. This one's, number is integer max value. Now, this one, hey, how's it going, Protege crew? Thanks for popping by. So number is an integer with the max value. Honestly, I think this is just going to give like some 1e something. Oh no, it's saying it is a value integer, which does make sense. Okay, so that's all good. Again, I should probably just read the descriptions here. So number.infinity is not an integer. So that's weird. This is saying true, wasn't it? Let's go back here because I just got confused. It's saying it is an integer. So actually this one I'm not really sure what's up here because number.infinity, oh whoops, silly me, gotta read infinity, and that should pass. Okay, actually, okay, then we're on the last one here. it's funny because I was staring at that. I was like, number dot max value. It's true. It is an integer. And I'm like, clearly did not read. I have to put number dot infinity. Okay, last one. Not a number is not an integer. So we're going to just switch this to is integer. That should pass. These, and if we run them all, they all pass. And then you can reset the code if you wanted to redo these things. Oops, maybe I came to the wrong one again. Okay, so we did the number API, and then, you know, we just come along and do the next one. So I'm just going to head to the array API. There's is not a number and number.parseInt. I guess we could do this. Let's do the parseInt one. Why not? We're just getting warmed up, so, and there's not too many here. So make all the tests pass. It tells you what to do here at the top of these tests. I'm gonna zoom in one more time there. Okay. There's a max value and there's a few other things. There's a lot of these things, it's like, I don't come across them in my day-to-day Rafi. So it's like, you know, it's the kind of thing like, I mean, max value I was aware, but sometimes there's just obscure stuff in the language, and yeah, min value too. Yeah. So, and just for fun, we can just show that up here. So if we do number dot, and this is where the value of autocomplete comes in. There's autocomplete in your developer tools, like, you know, but if you're using something like Visual Studio Code too. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll do some object destructuring for sure, Bogdan. So you're saying you don't have anything specific, but you want to check that out. Okay, sure. Let's just go to the min value. So I guess min value is the negative equivalent. So let's close that here. Okay, I'm going to switch to VS Code. Now, if you folks aren't aware, there's a really cool extension for VS Code called Quokka. What you just do is, if you have it installed, you do Command-Shift-P, and then you can type, it's showing up here because I used it recently, but you would type in like Quokka, and then you say new JavaScript file or new TypeScript file. I already have one open here. The cool thing about this is, yes, you could use a node REPL and all that, but this is like, I literally just open a file and then I can start typing, and you'll see it's outputting it at the bottom down here. Of course, I didn't type that properly, but you'll see that. So Bogdan wanted to talk about destructuring in objects. So let's do this. Let's do const. Actually, let's make an object first. Yeah, so let's do const some object, and we'll say people, and I don't know, let's make it an array, and then let's go coffee peep 1. It's for my virtual coffee folks. Coffee peep 2. And I'm not sure if the formatting that's going on is because I have Prettier and stuff installed as plugins, or if it's Quokka itself doing that. I'm not sure. So we got this here. We got people. Then we could say, I don't know, who knows, animals. Since we're in Quokka, Quokka is an animal, I believe. We'll go with sloth because that's the dev 2. And then we'll go with red panda because they're just pretty awesome. They're like a raccoon with superpowers. I don't know if that's the official term. Okay, so now if we do this, if we do console.dir, for example, and we're going to say, let's output the object, you're going to see it outputs it. And I'm not sure if Oscar is laughing about red pandas being raccoons with superpowers, but oh yeah, alpacas, you're right. Yeah, how could I forget alpaca? And all right, and speaking of alpacas, I'm gonna do alpaca-hide. We're gonna hide our alpaca, and there's also some other fun commands you can use in here. So I'll drop the help here. So I'm gonna move my poop up, for example. You're gonna see, except I wrote pop-up. Whoops. So there you go. You can move things on the screen if you want, have some fun. Yeah, super cyan raccoon for sure. Okay, so like I was saying, so Quokka is pretty cool because you can just start working and you can see things happening and stuff. So we wanted to do a bit of destructuring here. So there's some things you can do here, for example. So let's say we did const, and then we'll say people, and then equals some object. And then we could do this, console.dir people. So now you see you get the array of people, which is pretty cool. Let's see, I'm gonna throw in one. Oh, the crab's already in there, never mind. Yeah, so this is kind of destructuring at its simplest. We can also do animals in here. And if I do that, and I can do I can do animals. And then you're gonna see here's our array of animals. What you could do from this point too, there's some interesting things you could do. So let's say we had another property that we wanted to have here, like, I don't know. I'm just really thinking of random things here, but it's like jackets, red coat, I don't know, blue jacket, who knows? Okay, so I have it commented out right now. Hey, how's it going, Durby87? There we go. Thanks for popping by. So, okay, so with the destructuring here going on right now, we have people, we have animals, and we can see both of those after they've been destructured. We can output them all, we can see them down there. That's great. So now let's do jackets. And I'm gonna come here and let's do this. And I'm gonna do jackets, and it's gonna say undefined, which is expected because we have a comment out. If I uncomment it, you'll see that it shows them. But what I want to do right now is I want to comment them out again. And what you can do at this point is, and this is something that could happen for folks doing React or Vue or pretty much anything. But like I see this a lot in React or Preact, which is what we use at Forum. And then, you know, we're like, I want to get a list of jackets. Like maybe this is props that are coming in from some parent component. But maybe in some cases the prop isn't passed in because it's optional. You can do default props in React and stuff, but I typically like to do this where you just say like, I'm gonna give jackets a default value, and I'll just say, maybe I'll start off with like, it's an empty array. And this is kind of neat because then when you're doing things, you know that jackets is an array. So say you're mapping over it in your component, or even if it's not in React or Vue or whatever, say you're just mapping over this jackets property that got destructured. If we don't give it a default value, it's going to be undefined, and your map is it's gonna say map is not a method on undefined or something. I forget what the message is when something's undefined and you try to run the method. So this is kind of like a nice guard for this. And then you could also say like, you know what, maybe I do want to have some default coats, so I'm going to say purple coat. And then we got it there. So that's great. Now let's say we're like, yeah, let's do it this way. Say we have const, let's see, it's people there. I'll say there's a property called people, and it's, you know, we'll just say non-virtual coffee person. I don't know. Okay, so now we're gonna run into a problem here because we've got people here, and we have this some object which has this property called people here. So we're like, well, how the heck am I gonna destructure people from here? Because just based on how the code's written, people up here is already defined. Now, obviously you could say I'll just call this people1 or give it a different name. For sure you can do that. But another thing you can do is you're like, okay, this is people, but you know what? When I destructure it, I want to assign it not to a variable called people. I want to call it VC people. So you can do this, and the syntax looks weird, I think, initially to folks. Destructuring is one of my favorite things that got added to the ECMAScript. So then you see you've got VC people and people. So if we look at when I do console dir people, you see it says non-virtual coffee person here, which is expected. Now here, people is no longer being destructed. It's still being destructured, but it's being set to this instead. So now if I come here and then I do, for example, VC people, I'm going to get both of those right there. And yeah, so that's kind of a couple things that you may or may not be aware of, but you can assign things you destructure to a different name than the actual property, and you can also give it default values. Same thing in TypeScript. There's no difference really. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Bob, I just want to say Bob damn, because I know that's your username, but anyways, yeah, it's really cool stuff. I liked it a lot. Now let's do something different here. Let's keep what we all got there, and let's put jackets in here now, and then we'll say const. I'm going to destructure something shortly. Okay, now let's see here. I'm going to destructure people, and I'm going to say console dir people, and as expected, we're going to see the virtual coffee list of people here. That's expected. Now, you have these other two properties here. You're like, well, I do need them, but maybe I just want to split this up. So I'm gonna say ... rest of properties. So now we have people and we have this rest of properties. Now if I come here and I do rest of properties, you're gonna see it's got the people property from the object some object, but now it's created this other object called rest of properties, which contains the remaining properties. And this can be kind of cool because like maybe you only need something out of there and you want to use the rest. And I can give you a very concrete example of doing this is, say you have props coming in, and maybe a good example could be like your component takes certain props, like it's, in this case, say it's taking the people props, but you have all these other props that you might not know what their property names are. And an example of this could be like a bunch of area attributes. You could just spread those all here into an object here, and then what you could do later on is, this won't work because I'm in Quokka, but you could do something like this. So say we get, I'll do it here, and it's not going to like the JSX syntax, which is fine, but, or actually, let me see if Quokka does JSX. I don't think it does. Okay. Also, another thing to note about Quokka, there is a paid version of it, but if you're doing anything open source, it's free. Or personal projects, I believe. Double check that, but I don't pay for it right now. Yeah, so imagine you were doing something like my component. Quokka's going to complain about all this, and I'm going to say people, and we're going to say people, and then I have all these other props, so I can just say ... rest of properties, and this is a thing with JSX, but when you do something like this means spread all the properties of that object onto the component. So for example, doing this is the equivalent of saying animals equals animals and jackets equals jackets. And again, there's reasons to split these things. And like I said, like the area attributes could be one. Maybe some other things that are just like additional props that they don't necessarily affect, it's not necessarily data, but like the area. I think the area attributes is what I'm thinking the most right now, because we did something this recently in the forum code base. But then that allows you to say like, here's all my props, and then like I need to add other stuff like area label. I mean, some of these would probably be props already, but there's just cases where you want to spread these additional properties and not have to worry about doing them one by one and figuring out what they are. So that's another thing you can do. And so it's kind of funny, but you're spreading the rest of the properties into this variable called rest of properties, which creates another object. And then later on, you could spread that too. So that's kind of interesting. The other thing I would say is, what else? Oh yeah, one thing to note is you would always have to do this at the end. You can't do this, for example. This would give an error. Yeah, so it's saying comma is not permitted after the rest element. It's called the rest element because it's literally the rest of whatever is in that object. In the case of an object, the order of the properties doesn't really matter, so there's no harm in doing this. But let's say we were working with the array now. So let's do this. Let's go to our people, and then I want to say, you can, if you're not aware, you can also do array destructuring. This, I think this has gained some more attention recently with the use of hooks in React. But we can do this, for example. So we have this people array. And then we could say, like, right now I know there is 3 people in there. So I could say person1. And if I do that and do console dot, I can just do console log for person1. It's going to say coffee peep, which is expected. That's what you see here. And then we can do the same thing for person2, not person, person2, and person3. So if we come down here, as expected, they should output the names of the 3 people, which it does. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff. Link to 20 is saying you can use it to remove a first character of a word too. There's examples of that. There's things you could do, like say we know, like this works better when you kind of know where something is going to be. So say I'm like, I don't, for whatever reason, I don't care about person1 because who knows, maybe you're just not a good person, so you don't care about person1. I don't know. What you can do is you can just say, like, I'm going to put a comma, which means there is an element here that could be destructured, but we don't care about it. So by putting the comma, it just says skip the first one when I'm destructuring and then get the second and third. And you could do the same thing. Well, in the case of the middle one here, I could just delete this and it would destructure it and we still get it. Another thing you could do is, if we go back a bit here, we could do the same thing. We could do ... rest of people. Const word, the word. Yeah, you can. We'll get to that in a sec, Bogdan. So here we have rest of people. So if I show this here, what did I do? Oh, whoops, yeah, that doesn't work there. Okay. Hold on a sec. What did I do wrong? Pretty sure you can spread here. Oh, whoops. I know what I did wrong. Sorry. People. There we go. Okay, so now this is interesting. This is kind of similar to what we were doing with the object. So I'm like, I'm going to get the first one here, but I want to spread the rest. So like I want to create a separate array. And this is kind of ways you can slice out things. And this is kind of what Andrew was saying about a word. So if we were to do that with a word, for example, if we do, it's going to look funny, but we do const word equals people, or yeah, we'll just do people. And then we're going to say const, going to skip the first one, and other letters equals word, and I need to put 3 dots here, and then I can do console other letters, and you're gonna see it outputs an array of all the letters except for the P at the beginning. This may or may not be useful, but it's something you could do. But you could also do something like, okay, and I just want to join them with an empty string. So then you could just say like, this could be a quick way to say like, this is how, might not be the most performant way, but this could be a way to just say like substring kind of. You would probably use substring, but so that's something you can do. The other thing, you can do what you're saying there, Bogdan. So if we come back to here, so we have word, and then we can say const. You could do ... word equals word. Oh wait, no, this you couldn't. Yeah, no, you couldn't because it's the same. You would have to, because you're using the same variable. So you'd have, word 1 would work. But you can't do that just because this is const. If you set this to let, and then you did something like this, because like typically whenever you see destructuring, you always see const or let, but you could actually do something. Oh no, I guess you can't do this. Let's see here. You could do this, for example. You could do let pieces. That would work. Typically I wouldn't do something like this though. If I did, oh no, I guess that does work. No, you can't. Why isn't it like that? You could do pieces. The thing is, you're separating the declaration of the variable with what you're splitting out here. There could be a reason to do this maybe, but I typically wouldn't do something like this. I would literally just go like this, or typically I use const. I don't really want to get into the whole const let thing. I use, because like I know people have strong opinions about it, so I mean I do have an opinion about it, I guess, but I'm quite aware that const does not mean it's necessarily a constant value. If you use const, for example, for like a string or a number, it really is a constant. So num equals 1. Those are really numbers. Really constants. The problems you run into are when you say something like const my array equals this. What's happening here is my array is a constant, but it's not the object. The reference is constant. Like I wouldn't be able to do this now equals. It's going to complain about that. You can't assign to a constant variable. But even though this is constant, you can do my array dot push 1. Now again, the const here is really the reference, or the containing, the container object, like you're saying, Kirk. Because if I come here, I do console.dir my array, you're gonna see 1 in there now. You're like, and this can, I think this might trip up people sometimes if they're not aware of this behavior. So that's why a lot of folks just say, well, just use let, who cares? But to me, I understand this, and if I was on a project, like we have a lint rule in our project for form that we prefer const, but if I happen to jump on another project and they're like, we use let always, honestly, I'm not going to push too hard on it. Yeah, so the values are in the container there, Bogdan. So like, think of the array as the container. You can't change the container. You can change what's in it. That's why I was saying like my array is really more, the const my array is really more like the reference to my array can't be changed. That's why you can't do this. Like I was saying, create a new container. I like that analogy, because you're literally changing the assignment there. That's why you can't do that. But this is where it does, throw off people, because like, hey, this is constant. How can I add those things? There are other things you can do. Now, if you're in TypeScript, you can make the array read-only, for example, and that will work in TypeScript land. Like it won't compile if you try to mutate that array. But when it compiles down JavaScript, it's still a mutable array. Like if you deliver that in an npm package and somebody got access to that part of the internals, or it's something that's exposed, they would be able to, in JavaScript, change it. So that's just something to be aware of. I had a coffee sitting here and I completely forgot to drink it, and it's kind of cold now. But there are things you could do. You could say like object.freeze. There is a performance penalty to this, but then you can see here it's giving errors, you know, because it's frozen. I can't push to it. Yeah, no, yeah. I hate it when I forget to drink my coffee too. It's still good. It's just like kind of warm. Yeah. So what Kirk is saying is, yeah, it's not necessarily the same in another language. And I will shamelessly plug, but I am learning Rust as well. And let me go to that YouTube so I can drop that. We'll just get the link to it. But in Rust, like in Elm, let me pause this. Everything is immutable by default. So I'm gonna drop that yeah, thank you. I know we're learning Rust. Okay, that's just me talking to myself. I'll drop that in there if folks are interested. This stream we're doing on Tuesdays to learn Rust. But yeah, so in the case of Rust or Elm, for example, it really is immutable by default. You have to make it mutable explicitly to actually mutate it. So it's just something to be aware of. I use object freeze sometimes for, you'll see it in the code base sometimes, like if it's stuff that like it's a more complex object that I need to reference for whatever reason, but I really don't want folks to change it, I will use object.freeze. I don't do this often. Yeah, so there's that. Okay, so map, yeah, Kirk's saying the map and filter operations, they don't touch the original. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, so if we do a map, it's creating a new array. Same thing with a filter. Reduce is a little different because you have this mutable thing that you're constructing, which is totally fine. There was like a whole big debate about reduce on the weekend on Twitter, because Twitter just likes to get into big debates like that. But I don't use reduce that often. There's some use cases I have for it, like constructing a string like that, like an accumulator to build some markup sometimes if I'm not doing stuff like in React and stuff. But honestly, I'd say most of the code I'm slinging is like arrays, mapping them, maybe filtering. So, and then TK is also saying the spread operator to copy the array contains into, yeah. So let's go over that, because there's some important things to note about that. So if we do my array equals hello, yo, okay, and then we do, I'm gonna say a new array. So these are horrible variable names, but naming is hard, and I'm doing this live, so we're just going with like classic my array stuff. And here I'm gonna say I just want to spread my array. 3 dots always. And now if I do console.dir my array, and I do console.dir my new array, they're gonna look exactly the same. Okay, which is expected. But now let's do something different. I'm gonna make this one an object, and I'll say greeting yo. All right, cool. So now we noticed that they're both the same still. That's expected as well. Okay, now what we should see here now, unless I'm messing myself up here, but if I do my new array, and I'm gonna get the the second element in the array, dot greeting equals sup. Oh, what happened here? I spread this original array into a new array, but why am I seeing sup in both of them? Why don't I see yo in the first one? This is something to be very aware of. When you do any kind of spreading, what happens is you're doing, it's like a shallow clone of whatever you're spreading, whether it's an array or an object. So in this case here, we did spread the array elements, hello here, like just to show this example, if I do for 0 and I do my classic YOLO, you're like, oh wait, oh, it worked for yellow, but it says hello in the original and says YOLO in the new one. The reason is because this is a primitive type, so that's why they're different. But as soon as you get into it being an object, what you're doing here is you're copying the reference to you're copying the container is what I'm getting at. So that's why you can mutate this second value and it changes both of them, because it's the same container. So that's just something to be very aware of. So there's ways you can do this recursively. Another way you could do this is you could do like, I think this is still the best way to do this efficiently. I'm not positive, might have to Google that, but if you do stringify, not sturgify, stringify, I can't type, and I do my array, and then I do, it looks funny, but then I do json.parse. Now once I put this here, you're gonna see that they're different. And the reason why they're different now is because when I did a json.stringify and then a json.parse, I created new containers for these things, and that's why they're different. So spread is very useful, but as soon as you have elements in an object or an array that are a complex type, i.e. an object, you have to be aware of it, that could happen. So that's just something to be aware of. And I'm just doing a time check here. Okay, we got a couple minutes here. Yeah, for sure. Link to 20, you do, if you're doing the JSON parse and the JSON.stringify, you definitely lose all that stuff. There's other ways to clone things. You could do it recursively, you know? So if I come back to here, I'm not going to do a recursive thing right now, but if we come back to where we were, you know, we could do this. We could say like, we could do this, and then it would work. You know, I'm giving a trivial example here, but that's one way you could do it. So there's that. I think when you do a JSON parse though, you can also, I think as you map thing, well, you could, if you did the clone the way I was showing it, then you could maybe rehydrate those methods and stuff that were on the other one by like maybe doing an object assign or something, or you could spread those methods potentially. But anyways, it's just more for demonstration purposes in terms of what's going on here in terms of a shallow clone when you spread. Cool. Well, it's 11 a.m. My goal of these is to really keep it to like an hour. You know, I think we had a lot of fun here. Got into a bit of katas there, but thanks for starting the conversation there, Bogdan, about like object spread and all that. Had some fun for sure. Definitely check this out next week if you'd like to. I really appreciate it when you come by. It's just fun hanging out with all you folks anyways. And I just have a lot of fun streaming. So with that, I will say see you next week. Bye for now.